Hey guys, if you have valuable assets that you're looking to protect, then this video is definitely for you. And if you don't have valuable assets, well, think again, because your W-2 income is a valuable asset and your future income is also a valuable asset that creditors can attach. So in this video, we're going to talk about the 6 layers of asset protection that you should consider. As a former asset protection attorney, I think of asset protection as layers. After all, if you just have a W-2 income, you probably don't need some fancy asset protection structure, but you probably need some form of insurance. And on the other hand, if you're some successful doctor and a high income earner, then having an insurance policy alone isn't enough. So think of asset protection layers as layers of clothing, right? Depending on how cold it's outside will dictate how many layers of clothing you need to have. If it's a nice sunny day, then probably a t-shirt is good enough. But as it gets colder, you probably need a longer sleeve shirt. And as it starts to get really cold or snow, you're probably looking at putting on a jacket or maybe a winter coat. If it's really nice, you wouldn't wear a thick winter coat if it's a sunny day, and on the other hand, you wouldn't just wear a t-shirt if it's freezing outside. So here are the 6 layers of asset protection. Layer number 1 is the free protection. There are certain assets that are afforded protection from creditors just by regulation in your state or your county. For example, there's a homestead exemption where some portion of your primary residence may be protected against lawsuits. Now, that's going to depend on what state you're located in, because some states afford a very small amount, like $20,000 or $30,000, and then other states afford unlimited protection. So pay attention to your state and find out how much of your home is already protected and whether you have to do some affirmative action in order to get that protection. Some of it's automatic. Sometimes you're going to file some paperwork with the state. Another free form of protection are retirement accounts. Certain 401ks, certain pension plans are protected under the law, but again, you want to check the jurisdiction in your particular state. Some wages are protected. I kind of joked at the beginning that your future wages and your present wages are at risk, and that is true, but there are a certain basic level of wage that is protected so that you can have at least a basic living wage. But anything above that, there's going to be some percentage, again, depending on what your state is, of how much somebody can get or attach of your wages. And the last one that comes to mind is life insurance. There are some life insurance policies that have a cash value, and depending on what state you're in, that also may be protected from creditors. So the first step is going to figure out what assets do you currently own that are already protected for free under your current state. Layer number 2 is insurance. As you guys know, I always preach that insurance is always your first line of defense, and I can't see any scenario where you don't want to have at least some level of insurance, whether it's for automobiles, an umbrella policy, or what have you. My pet peeve, of course, is that insurance has a lot of issues with it, and so in the event that an insurance isn't there to protect you, you'll want to move on to your next layer, which is layer number 3. Layer number 3 is privacy. Now, privacy works really well alongside insurance because one of the first things that plaintiffs' lawyers tend to do is they tend to do an asset search on you and they're trying to figure out what assets do you have so that if they do get a judgment, they're able to collect something. And when they can't find anything to collect, then they're much more inclined to settle the matter for the insurance limits that you have on your current policies. If they do an asset search and find that you have all these homes and real estate and plenty of additional assets to go after, they may want to go ahead with the litigation, get a judgment, and they know that in addition to whatever insurance policy you have some additional assets. So preventing the plaintiff's lawyers from finding out what kind of assets you have really helps you in settling a matter before it goes to trial. Now remember, whether you have assets or not is not something that a plaintiff's attorney can actually look at until there's a judgment received. And because many of the attorneys rely on a contingency fee basis, they tend to not want to pursue claims if they don't have a guarantee that they're actually going to be able to collect down the road. So if they can't find any assets, they're going to be really incentivized to settle for the insurance limit. Layer 4 is entity structuring, which we talked a lot about in this channel, and that's utilizing companies like limited liability companies, LLCs, or limited partnerships to transfer your assets into so that you are protected, not only you from your assets, but also your assets from you. So entity structuring is really the backstop of when insurance isn't there or you're underinsured. You want to make sure that you have some entity structures behind that insurance policy. Layer number 5 is asset protection trust. Now, when you get to this level, this is not something that everybody should have. It really depends on how dangerous your profession is and how much assets you actually have to protect. But at some point, when you have $2, $3, $4, $5 million in assets or above, you want to start considering asset protection trusts, not only the domestic variety, like a Nevada asset protection trust or an Alaska asset protection trust, but also offshore options like the Cook Islands or Nevis. So trusts are the next level, but the big drawback from trusts are that they're really expensive to set up and they're pretty expensive to maintain. So if you have a small estate, Maybe you've got a couple of rental properties. It's probably not something that you need, similar to not needing the winter coat when it's a nice sunny day outside. And the final layer is layer number 6, which is equity stripping. Now, equity stripping is a really sophisticated strategy which involves stripping away the equity from your asset and putting it into a safe place, an LLC that you own. It's similar to when banks put liens on your property. They give you a line of credit or they give you a loan, and in exchange for that loan, they put a lien on your property, whether it's a second or third lien, or if it's an asset, they could put a lien on your asset, effectively removing that equity that's available for creditors. In this case, you just happen to be your own bank. We actually talked about this strategy in a previous video, which we're going to do a link below, along with some other links of videos that we've done that really go into more depth with some of these layers. If you have specific questions about any of these layers, drop a comment below. But in the meantime, check out those other videos that really go into depth of these 6 separate layers.